I close my eyes and let the familiar sense of home wash over me, transporting me to a brighter time. The warm aroma of baking chocolate chip cookies wafts through the air, fragrant and comforting. The kitchen is bathed in sunlight, the mid-afternoon glow igniting the golden brown crust of my secret recipe. I can almost hear Michael's laughter echoing through the walls as he bounds into the room with an enthusiasm only a child can muster. "Mom, can I help?" he'd exclaim, his little hands already reaching for the mixing bowl, eager to be part of the magic. The bustling energy of that moment still lives vividly in my mind. I can feel the gentle warmth of his body as we huddled together, laughing over spilled flour and the occasional chocolate chip that would go astray. Back then, weekends were our time, a ritual I treasured above all else. Our family calendar, marked with vibrant stickers, would announce our special baking days. I can still recall the feeling of his small hands kneading the dough, how the sheer joy radiated from him, and how it filled the room, bouncing off the walls. "More sugar," he would cry, his face smudged with flour and delight as I dutifully added a heaping spoonful. Each dose felt like a sprinkle of my love, binding our family with sugary sweetness. I reveled in these small moments, believing they knit the fabric of the bond between us tighter, stronger. Those mundane days became the foundation upon which I built my hopes for Michael's future. I remember every birthday I celebrated for him, meticulously crafting balloons and cake designs that would ignite wonder in his eyes. "Wow, Mom, you're the best." His gratitude was my fuel, the affirmation that my sacrifices, my dreams set aside, were worth every moment spent nurturing his ambitions. He was my pride, my universe, and I was determined to mold him into a man of integrity and compassion. As the years slipped by, those cherished memories formed a rich tapestry, suffused with love, laughter, and the occasional tears shed during moments of hardship. Every time he stumbled, every time he found victory, I was there, a steadfast presence. Yet somehow a shadow began to creep into our lives. I had started noticing it subtly. A slight shift in Michael's demeanor, a growing discomfort in his gaze as he transitioned from the boy who'd always reach for comfort to a man grappling for independence. What had once been an open door began to feel like a heavy curtain separating us. I sensed it during moments of silence that lingered too long, a chill that chilled what was once warm and inviting. Now, as I stand in this familiar kitchen, the scents and sounds swirling around me, nostalgia strikes a bittersweet chord. The kitchen walls, plastered with family photos capturing our joy, juxtapose against the restless silence thickening with uncertainty. A creeping sense of lost surfaces, an unsettling reminder of how quickly things shift in family dynamics. I cannot shake the flicker of foreboding, the first warning signs that perhaps not everything was as secure as I hoped. How did I let this happen? I wonder, lifting my gaze toward the kitchen window, my heart aching with the realization that the innocence of our shared moments could soon succumb to the tide of external conflicts threatening to wash them away. As I reflect, I feel a tightness in my throat. If only I could hold on to those radiant days a little longer, remind myself of the love and dedication I poured into my son, the warmth that once enveloped us both. But change is inexorable, and I stand on the precipice teetering between the cherished past and an unsure future. The first time Clara entered our home, the air crackled with the energy of change. She burst through the door with an exuberance that immediately captivated everyone. Michael was overjoyed, a radiant smile illuminating his face, and I felt a shift in our dynamics right from that moment. The warmth of our family gathering turned to a bubbling anticipation. Clara was indeed a force of nature. The dinner table was set elegantly, the aroma of roasted chicken mingling with fresh herbs wafting through our cozy home. Michael's laughter filled the space as he exchanged playful banter with Clara, but a knot formed in my stomach. I poured the wine and tried to rejoin the spirited conversation, but Clara's laughter always drowned out my voice. She exchanged playful jabs with him, while I felt my own words slipping away, rendering me an invisible bystander. Clara, let me tell you about the time Michael almost set the kitchen on fire while trying to bake a cake. I attempted, hoping to weave my story into their exchanges. But as I looked up, Clara leaned into Michael, a sly grin dancing on her lips. "Oh, that sounds hilarious, but really, how could he have done that?" Her laughter surged like waves crashing against my fragile confidence. As dinner progressed, Clara's sharp wit transformed into something more insidious. The first effect I noticed was subtle but chilling, a dismissive tone that shadowed her laughter. "Agnes, I think we have a different approach to parenting nowadays," she remarked, her eyes glancing briefly at me before returning to Michael. "You wouldn't want Sarah to grow up without any structure, right?" The way she emphasized structure ignited a sense of unease, a warning bell ringing in the depths of my mind. I could feel Michael's sheepishness, an unexpected hesitance that settled in the back of his throat, narrowing it like a noose. Despite my own apprehensions, I sought to brush off the unease, believing that everyone deserved a fair chance. Surely she would see the love I aimed to share with my granddaughter. Weeks turned into months with Clara settling comfortably into her role as daughter-in-law. Yet each gathering began to evoke apprehension and anxiety. It was as if I was stepping into a battlefield, unsure of where I stood in this new alliance. Christmas felt strained, a stark contrast to the joyful celebrations of previous years. I had baked dozens of cookies, decorated the tree, hung out cherished ornaments from years past, but Clara had other ideas. "Agnes, let me take charge this year. It's time we modernize our traditions," she insisted, as if my careful crafting of memories had become outdated. I smiled weakly, but the tightness in my chest expanded. The warmth of the season shifted, replaced by a cold shadow that crept over the festivities. Michael, entranced, nodded along as Clara dictated the day's agenda, rooting her dominance firmly in place. I tried to engage with Sarah, offering to read her favorite story, that classic tale of adventure that always thrilled her sparkling eyes. Yet, with a raised eyebrow and a dismissive wave of her hand, Clara shot me down. "Mom, don't overwhelm her with too many options. Let's keep it simple, right, Sarah?" I cringed at the way she patted her daughter's head, an authoritative gesture that pinned me further down. There was laughter, but it felt hollow, a facade peeking through a suffocating veneer of control that Clara imposed. I quietly moved to the corner of the room, attempting to absorb the love I felt for my granddaughter. I sold myself short, unwilling to create conflict, yet feeling increasingly neglected, as if I were drifting alone in a vast ocean of family where Clara held the compass. Family gatherings became a litany of subtle barbs. During a Thanksgiving dinner, Clara commented, "Agnes, don't you think Sarah is too young for all these old-world traditions? Maybe you should let her enjoy some modern pastimes." Michael chuckled, short and clipped, avoiding my eyes. Each comment chipped away at my heart, eroding the foundations of love I had built over 2 decades of motherhood. Despite my efforts, Clara's disdain pierced through the atmosphere, laying a heavy weight on my shoulders. I observed the exchanges between them, how they shared inside jokes and how laughter bubbled over with newfound intimacy, each giggle fracturing the bond I had once felt with my son. It felt like I was at the helm of a fragile ship in turbulent waters, grappling but always slipping beneath the waves. I kept asking myself, where was the boy I nurtured so fiercely? In the rear view of my memories, I could see him, the child who needed his mother not just for sustenance but for understanding. Yet Clara's influence felt like an ever-thickening fog, obscuring every last trace of that innocence. One evening, I discovered my long-forgotten paintbrushes in the back of a drawer, their bristles worn but carrying nostalgia. I set up a canvas in the living room and began to paint a deep blue ocean under a sunset sky. The strokes felt like an embrace, a connection to the passion I once carried. I hoped Michael would notice, perhaps join me, but when he arrived home with Clara, laughter erupted. "Look, Michael, I bet your mom would rather be in the kitchen," Clara said, gesturing dismissively toward my work. "We wouldn't want to distract her from cooking while we tackle something fun." Her laughter pierced through the threadbare moments of joy I had tried to create, sending me retreating into the recesses of my heart. In time, these instances blended into a crescendo of emotional isolation, shaping an uncomfortable reality that left me grasping for something solid and real. The shift in my family began to feel monumental, as if it were designed to erase the love I possessed, replaced by Clara's need for control over our lives, the first signs of battles yet to come. Every family gathering had morphed into a performance where I became the gracious yet invisible participant. Clara's influence seeped into every facet of our interactions, making it impossible for me to ignore the mounting weight of her disdain. She seemed to undermine my place in our family with each comment, and Michael's laughter at her quips felt like a knife twisting in my heart. The annual family reunion approached, a cherished tradition filled with laughter and camaraderie. As the sun warmed the vast expanse of our backyard, the familiar aroma of grilled food mingled with the laughter of children playing. Yet, amidst this lively scene, I felt the heaviness of Clara's presence, her hawk-like gaze scrutinizing my every move. "Agnes, sweetie, can you help set the table?" she asked, her voice layered with a sweetness that barely masked condescension. I nodded, hoping the rhythm of serving would provide solace from the tension in the air. Clara's laughter, light and overbearing, echoed through the yard. "I thought this was all about the kids," she quipped, nudging Michael, who laughed, the sound sharp and clipped, a signal that he was drifting further from me. With each plate set, I sensed Clara's critical gaze, my hesitation magnified by her influence. As I carefully aligned the utensils, my hands trembled, betraying my mounting anger. I longed for my place around the table, the unity I had nurtured with love for 2 decades. But it felt as if I stood under a spotlight, exposed, while Clara took center stage as the star of our family story. As the evening progressed, Clara seamlessly shifted the conversation toward her parenting agenda. "Agnes, I can't imagine you let Michael do this when he was Sarah's age, right?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Each dismissal stung, and I remained quiet, searching for ways to break the invisible barrier separating me from my son. The distress magnified during a Thanksgiving dinner where Clara critiqued every contribution. "Oh, this pie is cute, but I prefer something a bit more adventurous," she chirped, unwittingly slicing through my attempt to share family traditions. Michael's nervous laughter only added to the simmering tension, and I felt as if my contributions belonged to a forgotten era, one Clara was determined to erase. It was a particularly vivid autumn day in the park, where the children ran freely, laughter ringing through the air as they chased one another in joy. Sarah, radiant with happiness, rushed into my arms, and for a fleeting moment, everything felt perfect. But Clara swooped in with her camera, kneeling beside us. "Say cheese, Sarah," she urged, encouraging my granddaughter to pose for the picture while pushing me to the sidelines. My smile felt forced as I embraced Sarah tightly, wishing desperately to show her love without the overshadowing influence of her mother. I could see Michael glance at me, a knowing look in his eyes, but it vanished behind Clara's magnetic pull. Each event only magnified my feelings of isolation, forcing me to retreat into myself as Clara carefully crafted her narrative, relegating me to an afterthought. In moments where I sought to offer guidance or share my thoughts about Sarah's upbringing, Clara's rebuttals stung. "We want to cultivate independence," she would say with a smug grin, dismissing my efforts with a casual flick of her wrist. I felt cheated out of the love I had once poured into my relationships, my contributions fading like whispers in a crowded room. One chilly winter evening, I sang a familiar lullaby I'd sung to both Michael and Sarah. As the notes floated softly in the air, Sarah's eyes sparkled with recognition, but Clara's scoff shattered the moment. "Really, Agnes, you aren't still doing that, are you? We need to teach her real-world skills." I felt the weight of her words like a physical blow, a suffocating reminder of my diminishing role. My heart ached, struggling to find a way to connect with my granddaughter amid Clara's constant interference. Each gathering became a tapestry of disparities in how I saw love and connection versus Clara's attempted control. The air thickened with unspoken humiliation, and the realization that Clara meant to conquer this domain sent ripples of dread through my heart. I kept asking myself how a bond I'd nurtured for so long could be so easily compromised. The disparity between my values and Clara's relentless push for dominance made my heart heavy. As the isolation enveloped me, the flickers of resentment grew stronger. I had dedicated my life to loving my son, cultivating memories and supporting him unconditionally. Now, the space I had built felt drained, stripped of its vibrancy, replaced with Clara's need to reign supreme. But amidst the hum of humiliation, one thing remained constant: my profound love for my family, especially for Sarah. Rediscovering my voice became more than a fleeting thought. It shifted beneath the surface, raw and yearning for resolution. If love could craft bonds, then surely it could help me reclaim my place. Each moment I was humiliated only strengthened my resolve to push back against the tides of control that had threatened to engulf me. This was my family, and I would not give them up without a fight. Weeks drifted by, each one blending into the next, and I became more resolute in my intent to reclaim my voice. The echoes of Clara's laughter still stung, but they were also becoming motivation to unearth the truth of our changing dynamics. I started paying closer attention to everything: the subtleties of Clara's words, the way Michael reacted, even how Sarah responded to us both. The best strategies I had learned are often built upon a foundation of meticulous observation. The kitchen became my sanctuary during this time. I immersed myself in preparing meals, making everything with extra care as I reflected on my evolving role. I'd chop vegetables, the knife clinking against the cutting board, rhythmically carving out my anxieties. I began to notice that each dish I prepared felt like a way of reinforcing the love I had always given to my family, right in the midst of Clara's antagonism. One afternoon, in a moment of keen observation, Clara made a disparaging comment about my vegetable soup. "I didn't realize we were still cooking like we were in the 90s, she'd said flippantly while stirring a pot of trendy quinoa. Michael chuckled, and my stomach turned. Her words came still echoing in my mind, twisting like knives. But rather than dismiss them, I recognized the pattern. A subtle way not just to criticize my cooking, but to chip away at what I stood for. So I started taking mental notes, crafting a map of the familial dynamics. I began cataloging instances where Clara's interactions felt contradictory, even hypocritical. During a seemingly minor gathering, Clara lectured me on modernizing education for Sarah. Yet I noticed her reluctance to involve Sarah in the simple task of setting the table. She shouldn't be burdened with chores, Clara declared, while I felt an eye twitch at the subtle hypocrisy. Isn't she too young to learn what responsibility is? I thought, swallowing the urge to voice my concerns. Instead, I observed and filed these moments away, hoping to bring them to light at the right time. I started to see, all too clearly, how Clara weaved her narrative around control, the ultimate goal being to create a world where my input was irrelevant. Every weekend became an opportunity to further solidify this endeavor. I began confiding in the few family members who remained neutral. Aunts and cousins, those who shared laughter over coffee in the kitchen. I would whisper snippets of my experiences with Clara. Maybe this was my first step towards rallying support, to show them that I wouldn't just roll over while Clara attempted to rewrite our family history. I hadn't realized how isolating this dynamic had made me until I sought those connections. Even Michael began to take notice, I hoped. During one such family dinner, I decided to test the waters. I aimed to present a cohesive front, my comments carefully woven with nostalgia and the familiar comfort of shared history. Remember the summer trips we took to the lake? Michael always loved to fish, I initiated, trying to draw him in. I watched as the light in his eyes flickered briefly before being overshadowed by Clara's interruption. Oh, but that was such a hassle with the mosquitoes. We have so many better plans for Sarah now, she interjected, dismissing my memories. My heart sank, but I wouldn't lose hope. These interactions fed my growing determination. Each moment I faced Clara's dominance only fueled the fire within me to reclaim my stories. It was during one dreary evening, as I watched Sarah doodle pictures of her family, that clarity struck me. Mommy and I will do art day tomorrow, right, Mommy? Sarah exclaimed, her face glowing with excitement. Clara, however, seemed preoccupied, scrolling through her phone. Oh, sure, darling, but we'll focus on something serious, she replied, her voice dismissively airy. Sarah's expression wilted slightly, and I felt the curls of discontent swell within me. That was when I decided to gently intervene. How about I set up some watercolors for us? Remember how much fun we had painting together? Clara's eyes narrowed, but I pressed on, trying not to back down. You can teach her about shapes and colors, and I'll add in some stories. I felt a rush of adrenaline push my heart. This was my chance to voice my place within the family dynamic. To my surprise, Sarah's eyes sparkled and she nodded enthusiastically. Yes, let's do it, Grandma, she shouted, her excitement overshadowing Clara's steady gaze. This small victory felt monumental in a sea of challenges. For every moment Clara sought to control, I had staked my claim with love, an anchor amidst a turbulent sea. Days flowed into plan-making. I began to prepare for our next family gathering with newfound determination. I envisioned an event that would counter Clara's prevailing influence, one where the boundaries of our roles could shift. I drafted invitations home and offered them as a reminder of the love embedded in our family, an opportunity to reaffirm our unity beyond Clara's bureaucratic control. In quiet moments, I would whisper my mantra, "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart." This mantra rang loudly within, growing richer with each repetition, synonymous with my intent to regain my dignity. As the days passed leading up to the event, I carefully curated memories and experiences to share, significant stories ripe with love and connection that would serve as a reminder of my place as both a mother and a grandmother. I almost relished imagining how Clara would react to my strength, but I also knew I had to tread carefully. I watched Clara's demeanor. each interaction a new puzzle piece piecing together the discrepancies in her parenting philosophy. Holding on to these insights was my plan. I would shine a light on her contradictions at the gathering, hoping the warmth of love would infuse the space I desperately sought to reclaim. This was my family, flawed and beautiful, and it was time to remind them and myself who I truly was. The day of the gathering arrived, bathed in the warm hues of late autumn. The fireplace crackled softly in the background, filling the air with a comforting warmth that mingled with the aromas of roasted turkey, spiced cider, and freshly baked pie. I had worked tirelessly on preparations, crafting a cozy atmosphere designed to envelop my family in love and warmth while subtly challenging the power dynamics that had shifted under Clara's influence. As my decorations set a welcoming scene, I glanced around at family photos adorning the walls, images that held decades of laughter, shared milestones, and abiding love. I wanted to weave those feelings into the fabric of our gathering. It was in these memories that I drew my strength. I straightened the lace tablecloth, a fierce resolve brimming within me, as I set an extra place at the table. One for my voice, my memories, my rightful place. Clara arrived fashionably late, as was her custom, her entrance marked by an air of entitlement as she swept away the strands of winter that clung to her coat. Michael followed close behind, lips curled into a smile that seemed distant, as if he remained tethered to both me and Clara, unsure of how to navigate the space between us. "Did you really bake a whole turkey, or is that just for show?" Clara called out, her tone light but a tinge condescending. My heart quivered, but I pressed on. "Just for us, but it's more about the company," I replied quietly, trying to infuse sincerity into my words. She rolled her eyes subtly, and I steeled myself for what lay ahead. Gathering everyone around the table, I steered the conversation toward shared memories, those treasured moments that danced like flickering candles in my mind. I remember making apple pie every fall with Michael. He would always eat half the dough before I could even roll it out. A shared chuckle rippled through the room, and I savored the sound, wanting to bottle it up and preserve it. But Clara quickly interjected, "My intention is to teach Sarah something more contemporary, though," she dismissed, her words dismissing my fond recollections with a wave of her hand. "She's a bright kid, and we must prepare her for the real world." With her words still lingering in the air, I decided it was time to unleash what I had gathered. "Clara, we can respect traditions, while also allowing for growth. It's not about erasing the past. It's about building on it." I felt the tremor of old insecurities, but I held steady, forcing myself to maintain eye contact. For a moment, silence hung around us, thick and unyielding, and I could see the gears turning in Clara's mind. Then she sighed theatrically, her eyes narrowing. "How quaint, Agnes, but think about how you would handle things if I weren't around." The undercurrent of her games threatened to undermine my courage, but I wasn't done yet. "That's the issue, Clara. You don't seem to believe I can contribute anything worthwhile. Let's focus on what really matters," she countered quickly. But the slight crack in her poise gave me hope. Maybe I was chipping away at her facade. The evening morphed as I leaned into my strong foundation of love and family bonding. Even during the awkward moments when Clara attempted to steer us toward her scripted life lessons, I shared stories with Sarah that reflected resilience, kindness, and the beauty of allowing a child to explore while learning from mistakes. You know, I never allowed Michael or his friends to become burdened with worries. They learned to play, to dream, and to live joyfully, I said, looking pointedly at Clara. That, too, is a valuable lesson. I watched Michael's expression shift, an echo of recognition blooming across his face. For the first time in ages, he seemed to visibly engage, caught between Clara's relentless criticisms and my nurturing memories. Mom always made things exciting, he chimed in thoughtfully, as laughter slipped out without reservation. Those canoe trips were epic disasters. Who lost the oar again? Encouraged, I pursued this thread, weaving it further into our tapestry of love. I could see Clara beginning to falter slightly, her brow knitting in frustration as I drew everyone closer to our shared narratives. The laughter spread through the room, bubbling up like fresh joy, and I became increasingly emboldened. As the conversation turned toward Sarah's newfound artistic endeavors, I watched Clara's irritation grow, as if she was trying to bat away every mention of me. When Clara attempted to steer the subject back to her own plans for Sarah, I sought to shine a light on Clara's contradictions. But don't children thrive when given the freedom to explore creativity? We're nurturing young minds here. Let's not stifle them completely. The rhythm shifted. Every moment was a slow unraveling of the hold Clara had insisted on maintaining. Agnes, I can't let you simply pull her into a world of fantasies. It's impractical, she pressed, indignant. Impractical? I repeated, heart pounding at the confrontation. So, it's impractical to let Sarah paint? To create? Isn't that how we connect? The room held its breath as Clara's lips quirked in indignation. I pressed on, feeling the courage swell. Sarah can learn practical skills, but we shouldn't take away her joy in the process. It's about balance. A child's imagination holds immense power, and we must nurture that. It wasn't glamorous, but it was raw. The fabric of the room shivered as Michael began inserting snippets of his own experiences, echoing, "Mom's creativity is part of who she is. Clara, talks like these are where I learned to express myself." At that moment, Clara's expression darkened and deflated. Her carefully constructed ideals fractured under the weight of our shared memories. The laughter and acknowledgement among us blossomed like flowers breaking through the cracks of ice. It became harder for her to retain her throne of control. And then, as if making a decision about which shadow to fade, Clara finally narrowed her eyes on me, the calculated smile she wore faltering. "Fine then. If this is how you want to operate, then have it your way." I encountered her gaze undeterred, feeling an unexpected thrill surge through me. This was my moment to reclaim my dignity, to state again my worth, to affirm my identity. If you're not here to allow love to grow, Clara, then I'll take up that mantle with my heart open. You can't silence me. Silence once again engulfed the room, but this time it carried a charge. There was an undeniable promise in the air, one that echoed softly with the laughter of our past. The realization that love could conquer Clara's imposed barriers gave way to a new beginning, one where my voice was no longer muted. As the evening wore on, the warmth spread, and I felt a renewed hope for our family. It was a turning point not just for Clara, but for all of us. We faced the unfolding moments together, deciding to rekindle those familial bonds that had begun to slip, a commitment to nurture each other, embracing laughter, creativity, and love without constraint. It was here that I would gather my strength, as my mantra transformed into a personal declaration. They can mute me at the table, never in my heart. The weeks following the gathering felt like a series of strokes painting a brighter landscape in my life. With the holiday season looming, I knew that it was crucial to deepen my resolve and further define my place within my family. I envisioned hosting a holiday gathering, one that would flood our home with the warmth of connection and love, while also subtly pushing back against Clara's attempts to overshadow my role. As I wandered through the local grocery store, inhaling the rich aromas of pine and cinnamon, I selected ingredients that meant more than just sustenance. They represented traditions and memories. Each item I carefully placed in my cart was an opportunity, a chance to create not only meals but moments of togetherness with Sarah. In the days leading up to the celebration, I transformed my home into a cozy holiday sanctuary. Twinkling lights adorned the windows, and handmade decorations from previous holidays hung prominently around the walls. I set up an arts and crafts station, ready for Sarah to dive into creating ornaments, tapping into the very creativity I aimed to instill in her. When the day finally arrived, my heart raced. The familiar sensations of hope and anxiety mingled within me. As family members filtered into the house, their laughter warmed the air. I felt a pulse of joy as I welcomed them, embracing each one, a gesture filled with love and a quiet reminder of my presence. "Wow, Grandma, look at all the sparkles!" Sarah exclaimed, her eyes shining as she eagerly approached the craft station. I knelt beside her, guiding her hands as they picked up glitter and glue, determined to infuse her experience with creativity and joy. Michael and his cousins gathered in the kitchen, sharing stories and laughter. I strained to hear their echoes through the bustle of holiday preparation, allowing the sound to wash over me. I looked over at Clara, who stood apart with arms crossed, a frozen figure observing, assessing. I could sense the weight of her discontent. "Let's create something special for everyone," I encouraged, nudging Sarah to make something heartfelt for Clara. The idea inspired her. "I want to make one for Mommy too," she chirped, her innocence shining through the room. But Clara, always the critic, didn't let that moment linger. "Let's see how those turn out, sweetie. Crafts can be messy, and I'm not sure Grandma is equipped to handle that," she quipped, her eyes flashing. I felt the familiar surge of frustration, yet I forced myself to smile. "Messiness can be part of the process, just like life," I replied, holding my chin high. Her dismissive tone could not stifle my resolve. "Yes, but," Clara began, but I interjected with determination. "Creativity nurtures a child's spirit, Clara. Isn't that where the real magic lies?" For a brief moment, silence draped over us, the energy shifting in the room. In that charged atmosphere, Michael chimed in, expressing support for my approach. "Mom always made things exciting," he said, his voice steady and affirming. Clara, visibly thrown off, attempted to regroup her composure but couldn't quite grasp onto her control like before. She huffed quietly, absorbing the implications of our collective memories, and the shift in the atmosphere was palpable. Here, amidst laughter and shared stories, I could feel the powerful momentum of connection rising. As the evening progressed, Michael led their eager hands in a festive kitchen experiment, while Sarah delighted in crafting ornaments with fervor. I prepared the centerpiece for dinner, pouring love into each dish, echoing joy, my memories intertwined with the flavors filling the air. I kept nudging the conversations gently toward the themes of love, creativity, and cherishing family ties. "Let's take a moment to remember those we've lost," I proposed, lifting my glass, inviting warmth and sentiment around the table. Faces turned solemn for a brief second, then quickly morphed back into smiles, fusing together in a celebration of life and love. Clara remained a looming presence on the edge, her irritation still flickering but distinctly aware of the tender spirits unfurling around us. Yet I felt emboldened. This was more than just dinner. This was a healing, a reclaiming. In the spirited atmosphere, I faced Clara directly and remarked, "It's important to nurture love and creativity, even in the midst of chaos. Sarah deserves to explore her passions." Her eyes danced with defiance, yet at that moment the energy around us had shifted into a protective embrace that enveloped us all, except Clara stood subdued, caught in the world she'd tried to dictate. And as the hours waned and the laughter echoed around the table, I saw glimpses of the family I had longed for. The familiarity of love, began to mend the fractures with each smile exchanged and every story told. It turned into a reassuring testament to our bond, a gentle reminder of who we were, together beyond Clara's limitations. The rhythm of familial laughter seeped into every corner of my heart, softening the edges of doubt. I felt the energy swirl around me, lifting me higher than I had ever imagined possible. The mantra embedded within me whispered its power, reminding me, they can mute me at the table, never in my heart. I found comfort in having solidified my role, feeling cracks in Clara's stronghold widen as each joke and memory illuminated the space. This was not a defeat. This was a triumph, a realization that I had a voice worth celebrating, and that love, nurtured in creativity, could prevail. Always. As the evening wore on, I reveled in the laughter echoing throughout my home. The atmosphere buzzed with creativity, each joke and shared story illuminating the space like the twinkling lights I had strung up. It felt resilient, a tapestry woven with love, and it pushed against Clara's cold demeanor. "Can we show everyone our ornaments now?" Sarah chirped, her bright eyes focusing on me. My heart swelled with pride. This was a milestone, not just for her but for all of us. With Sarah leading the way, I gathered everyone around the table. "Look at what we made together," she exclaimed, proudly holding up her glittery snowman with a button nose. I watched Clara's body tense, the familiar mask of disapproval slipping into view. "I can hardly wait to see them," Clara said, her voice flat, pointedly avoiding eye contact. The lightheartedness of the moment began to falter, and I sensed the pivot in our fragile air. Encouragingly, I stepped forward. "Let's appreciate what we've created, Clara." Sarah put her heart into making these. I gestured to the array of ornaments, each one a testament to the love we had nurtured. But Clara's response was swift and cutting. "Artistry can be overrated. The real world requires discipline, not this frivolity," she said, her tone sharp. I felt the tension ripple around the table. Eyes darted between Clara and me. Anger simmered beneath my surface, but I clamped down on the fierce need to counterattack. "It's not frivolous. It's about heritage and identity, Clara. Sarah deserves to explore her creativity," I calmly asserted, focusing my energy on her. Clara squared her shoulders, her eyes narrowing. "There's a balance. You can't just let emotions dictate everything," she snapped. I took a deep breath, gathering the courage I had fortified over the past weeks. "But sometimes, Clara, emotions lead us to our truest selves. We've lived long enough under the weight of past traditions. It's time we embraced our evolving family story." Silence hung in the air, thickening with a strange intensity. Clara's lips pressed tightly together as her eyes flickered at the decorations, painted with laughter and memory. I could see a struggle behind her facade, and something within me dared to hope. As Sarah tugged at her sleeve again, asking to show her creations to Clara, it was like the warmth radiated outward from our gathered family, drawing Clara into the light. "Look, Mommy, we made something beautiful together." Sarah's voice held pure innocence and excitement that, for a moment, overshadowed Clara's hardened expression. Reluctantly, she leaned closer. "Fine, let me see." Clara reluctantly conceded, her voice softer than before. The ice splintered just a bit more, and I could feel the collective breath of hope in the room. In that pivotal moment, I saw Clara's stance waver. The embrace of laughter and joy surrounded her, giving life to the idea that love could manifest and flourish, even in the imperfections we feared. As Sarah unveiled her creations, each ornament became a symbol of resilience. I began to share my memories tied to each crafted piece, inviting everyone to join in, crafting a narrative that melded our pasts into a shared future. Laughter rippled again. The atmosphere lightened and I held on to that thread of connection. Together, we can reshape this story, I whispered to myself, feeling the mantra come alive again. They can mute me at the table, never in my heart. Clara stood silent, watching the family around her begin to soften her obstinate demeanor with shared laughter and joy, while I felt a sense of triumph holding me steady. The room glowed not only from the soft lights, but from the rekindled connections blossoming under the surface. This evening wasn't just a gathering, it was a profound act of defiance, a reclaiming of dignity, and a celebration of the remarkable tapestry that bound us together. As the night drew to a close, the laughter lingered like shadows dancing in the candlelight. I felt belonging swell within me, a profound victory framed by love, humor, and the raw power of family. Clara had opened a door, however small, allowing us to step through into a new era of understanding. In that moment of transformation, I realized we had defined our family narrative, solidifying our path forward. Reclaiming my dignity, I dared to dream of a future where love and creativity could flourish without boundaries.